It's hard to admit, but I don't think I ever felt like I was really part of my family. And the worst part is that I think it's always been that way. My name is Julia, and I spent most of my life living in the shadow of my older sister, Diana. We grew up in a small house, and it was always clear who was the favorite child, Diana. Diana could do anything, and for my parents, she was never wrong. And look, she made a lot of mistakes, but they would just laugh and say, "That's our Diana," as if everything she did wrong was cute. Meanwhile, I could barely breathe because they were already correcting me. "Julia, sit up straight. Julia, your grades could be better. Why can't you be more like your sister?" That last one hurt the most. The only person who made me feel important was my grandfather, my mother's father, Grandpa Max. He was tough, but he had a huge heart. He lived in a big house on the other side of town, and going there was like entering another world, where I wasn't compared to anyone else. "You remind me so much of your grandmother," he would always say, standing in front of an old painting in his living room. It was a portrait of a 19th century woman no one knew, but Grandpa swore she looked like his grandmother, who died when I was 12. "You look like her too, Julia. You have the same fire in your eyes." I never saw what he saw, but it made me feel special, like I really belonged, even if that place wasn't in my own home. Things only got worse when Diana dropped out of college in her third year. Mom and Dad had taken out loans to pay for everything, scraping together every penny, but Diana had bigger plans. She said she was going to start a business with her best friend, Sabrina. She kept saying it was going to be huge, that they were the next big thing. Mom and Dad just agreed, all proud of their entrepreneurial daughter. They didn't even care about the college money they had wasted or the loans they were still paying off. When my 18th birthday came around, we had a simple party at home. Nothing special, just family and a few neighbors. I wasn't expecting much, maybe some gift cards or clothes, but what happened next took me completely by surprise. Grandpa Max stood up after we cut the cake and tapped his spoon on his glass to get attention. "I have an announcement to make," he said, his voice echoing through our cramped living room. "Julia, I've watched you grow into an incredible young woman. You're hardworking, you're kind, and you deserve a chance to pursue your dreams." Then he took an envelope out of his jacket pocket and handed it to me. "I paid for your entire college education, all 4 years, wherever you want to study." I was breathless. The room went completely silent. I opened the envelope with a shaking hand. Inside were the papers, proof that my future was secure. "Grandpa," I began, but I couldn't even finish. I could only muster the strength to hug him with tears streaming down my face. That's when Mom cleared her throat. "Dad, can we talk to you for a minute?" Her voice was calm, controlled. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it here," Grandpa replied, still with his arm around me. "That's very generous," Mom said carefully, "but don't you think this money would be better spent helping Diana with her business? She's really struggling to make it work." "Excuse me," Grandpa interrupted. "This money is mine and I decide how to spend it. Diana made her choice when she left everything. Julia deserves this chance." I'll never forget the look on my parents' faces at that moment. They were really angry that I was being given an opportunity. Diana just stared at me from across the room with a look full of resentment. "Well," Dad said finally, forcing a smile, "this was a big surprise." The rest of the party was super tense, to say the least, but to tell the truth, I didn't even care. For the first time in my life, someone chose me, someone really saw me. I applied to colleges out of state, as far away from home as I could get. When August came, I packed my bags and left without looking back. During the holidays, I only visited Grandpa Max's house and avoided going to my parents' house as much as possible. The few times I went there, they only talked about Diana's business, saying that it was almost successful, that she was making important contacts, that success was just around the corner. Meanwhile, Diana never missed an opportunity to complain, saying it was unfair that Grandpa hadn't given her money. "His greed is what's keeping me from being a success," she said in tears at dinner one holiday. "If only I had a little more capital." I just nodded and counted the minutes until I could get back to campus. At least there I felt like I belonged somewhere. Everything changed in my third year of college. I was studying for midterms when the phone rang. It was Mom. "Julia," she said in a strange, emotionless voice, "your grandfather died this morning. The funeral will be on Saturday." I was in complete shock. During the entire trip home, Grandpa Max had been the only constant in my life, the only person who had seen me for who I really was, and now he was gone. I got an emergency leave of absence from the dean of the college and caught the first bus I could find. When I got to my parents' house, the mood was strange. Of course, there was sadness, but there was also a strange air of anticipation in the air, as if everyone was waiting for something. My parents hugged me when I walked in, but it was all very mechanical, as if they were just doing what they had to do. My mother's eyes were dry. "How are you holding up?" I asked. After all, she had just lost her father. "It's hard," she said, but her voice was emotionless. "We're making arrangements. The funeral is tomorrow and the reading of the will be later, at dinner." No one talked about Grandpa. No one remembered his stories. No one talked about how important he was. Instead, everyone just talked about his house, the things he left behind, and what was going to happen to all that now. "It's a big house for just one person to live in," Dad said. "It's a shame it's been kind of empty for so many years." "Grandpa liked space," I replied, trying to defend him. Of course, Mom said quickly, "but it's just a practical thought. We need to think about what's going to happen from now on." The funeral was small and very simple. I cried almost the whole time. My family was serious, restrained, as if they were just waiting for it to be over. Some of Grandpa's old friends spoke, told stories that made me smile through my tears, but when I looked at my parents and Diana, they seemed distant, as if they were only there in person. The next day, we gathered at the registry office. Mr. Davis, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, greeted us with a serious and respectful air. "I'm so sorry for your loss," Mr. Davis said. "Max was a good man and a client of mine for many years. He updated his will last month, in fact." Everyone jumped at that. My parents exchanged quick glances. "Let's get started," Mr. Davis said, opening a folder. He began reading through the formal wordy text, but soon got to the part that really mattered. "To my daughter, Carol Peterson, I leave my house and everything in it, except the items mentioned below." Mom sat up straighter and smiled a little that almost escaped the straight face she was trying to keep. "To my granddaughter, Diana Peterson, I leave the sum of $50,000 to be used for business development." Diana's eyes widened. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something. "To my granddaughter, Julia Peterson, I leave the 19th century painting that hangs in my living room." The room went silent. Then Diana snorted. "Really? She gets an old painting," she said, looking at me with a mixture of relief and mockery. "Grandpa left you some incomprehensible nonsense." Mr. Davis cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. "There's more," he said, pulling another paper from his briefcase. "Max had the painting appraised shortly before he died. The appraisers estimated its value at approximately $600,000. He handed me the appraisal papers." The room went completely silent. I stared at the paper in disbelief. $600,000 for that old painting? I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Diana went pale. Mom and Dad were staring at me with expressions I couldn't quite explain. They were in shock. But there was something else there, something calculating. The drive home was silent and uncomfortable. When we arrived, Dad broke the silence. "We've decided to move into your grandfather's house," he announced. "It's bigger than this place, and it makes more sense for us to use it instead of leaving it empty." I asked when we were going to sell it. "The money from the sale will go to Diana to help with her business," Mom replied. "So Diana would get the proceeds from the sale of the house, plus the $50,000 inheritance." I wondered if that would be enough for her, but I didn't have to think about it too much. "This is so unfair," Diana finally snapped, turning to me. "You don't deserve that painting. What do you know about art? You should give it to the family. It's my inheritance." "Grandpa wanted me to keep it," I said firmly, feeling anger building inside me. "I'm not giving it to her." I expected my parents to support Diana, as they always had, but to my surprise, Mom intervened. "Diana, that's enough," she said calmly. "There's no point in pressuring your sister. The painting is Julia's inheritance, just like the money is yours." I was in shock. Mom had never been against Diana before. It seemed strange, almost suspicious. The next few days were a blur. I spent most of my time at Grandpa's house, pacing the rooms, remembering him. The painting was still in the living room, the unknown woman staring at it with those eyes that, now that I really looked at it, seemed familiar somehow. Mom showed up one afternoon, carrying boxes. She was already starting to move things around. "What are you going to do with the painting?" she asked casually. "I don't know yet," I admitted. She nodded and set a box on the floor. "Don't worry about it, you can leave it here where you belong until you decide." I felt a great sense of relief. At least I didn't have to decide what to do with such a valuable painting while I was still in college. A few days later, I was back on campus, back to classes, study groups, exams. I tried to focus on my studies to honor Grandpa's investment in my education. A few months passed, and the pain began to fade, becoming easier to deal with. Then one night, while scrolling through social media, I suddenly stopped on my screen. There was a post from Diana with photos of a housewarming party that appeared to be at a new apartment downtown. The caption read, "New chapter, new place." I stared at the pictures in confusion. How could Diana afford an apartment downtown? Even with her grandpa's money and the sale of her house, it seemed like a stretch for someone whose business was supposedly struggling. I picked up my phone and called her. "Hey, congrats on the new place." "It looks amazing," I said when she answered. "Why didn't you tell me about it?" "You're busy with school," she replied dismissively. "Not like you're going to come home anyway." "Still, it's big news." "How's the business going?" There was a pause. "I have to go, Julia. I'll talk to you later." She hung up suddenly, leaving me with a strange feeling that I couldn't shake. A few months passed and summer vacation finally arrived. Despite my doubts about returning home, I packed my bags and headed to what was now my parents' house, Grandpa's old house. It was strange walking up that familiar path knowing that he wouldn't be there to greet me. Mom had redecorated a few rooms, but the living room remained largely the same. The painting, my painting, still hung in its place of honor above the fireplace. I stood in front of it, watching the woman's face. Grandpa was right, there was something in her eyes that reminded me of old photos of my grandmother. Dinner that night was just the three of us. Dad talked about his work, Mom shared neighborhood gossip, and I gave brief updates on school. It seemed almost normal, except for the elephant in the room, or rather, the apartment across town. Then, during a lull in the conversation, I casually said, "Did you guys sell the old house?" Mom and Dad exchanged glances. "Yes, we did," Mom finally replied. "We got a good price for it, too." "And did you give Diana the money for her business?" I pressed. Dad replied, "That's right, she needed the capital to expand." I nodded and took a sip of water. Speaking of Diana, her new apartment looks amazing. Downtown must be expensive. My parents shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. "Well," Mom said, forcing a smile, "her business is doing really well. She can afford nice things now." Something about her tone didn't sit right. I remembered Diana's evasiveness on the phone and how quickly she'd hung up when I asked about the finances. "That's great," I said, trying to hide my doubt. "What exactly does her business do these days?" "Oh, Dad waved his hand vaguely. "Entrepreneurial stuff, marketing consulting, I guess. She's always been the business-minded one." The conversation continued, but my suspicions didn't go away. The next day, I called Matthew, who was Sabrina's brother, the same Sabrina who was supposedly running this thriving business with Diana. "Hey Matthew, how's your summer going?" I asked after a bit of conversation. "By the way, how's Sabrina?" "Still working with my sister." "Jew, if you can call it work," he replied with an amused tone. "Those two are still playing entrepreneurs. But from what Sabrina tells me, they're not exactly killing it in the business world. They just like to tell everyone how important they are." My stomach tightened. Really? Because Diana had just bought a beautiful apartment downtown. I thought business was going well, but no way. He sounded genuinely surprised. Sabrina still lived in that cramped apartment with 2 roommates. She would have told her about it if she had suddenly struck gold. After we hung up, I sat on my bed thinking, if Diana's business wasn't doing well, where did she get the money for the apartment? The sale of the house and Grandpa's $50,000 could cover it, but my parents said the money from the sale of the house went toward Diana's business. I walked into the living room and my eyes were drawn to the painting again. Something seemed off. I walked closer, examining the brushstrokes, the way the light hit the canvas. It seemed brighter somehow, newer. A cold feeling washed over me as I took the frame off the wall and turned it over. I looked for the little marks and imperfections I had noticed when I looked at it with Grandpa. A small tear in the corner of the canvas, a spot of different colored paint on the back, the artist's faded signature. All of them were gone. This wasn't my painting. It was a forgery. My hands shook as I hung it back on the wall. Suddenly, everything made sense. Diana's new apartment, her mother's unusual support for my inheritance, her insistence that the painting remain where it was. They had sold my painting, my inheritance, and used the money to buy Diana's apartment, then replaced it with a fake, thinking I wouldn't notice or wouldn't care enough to check. I needed proof. I needed to confront them when they couldn't get away with it. So I waited, planning my next move carefully. That night, Diana joined us for dinner. I watched my family interact, noticing the meaningful looks they exchanged, the way they studiously avoided talking about Diana's apartment or my painting. It made me realize they had no idea I knew. As we all sat down at the table, I discreetly reached into my pocket and turned on the voice recorder app on my phone. No one noticed when I placed the phone on my lap, ensuring that it would pick up our conversation clearly. With the evidence secured, I was ready. I was thinking, I said, picking up the salt, I could sell the painting. I'm looking at a place near campus and could use the money for a down payment. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Mom cleared her throat. Honey, that painting is a family heirloom. You shouldn't sell it. Besides, Diana said quickly, you don't need an apartment yet. You still have a year in the dorms. I nodded thoughtfully, watching her reactions carefully. I've already made up my mind, I said. Actually, I've called an appraiser to come tomorrow and verify its authenticity before I list it. Suddenly, Diana pushed away from the table, her eyes filling with tears. The dam broke. Okay, I sold it. Okay, I sold your stupid painting, she cried. Mom and Dad stared at her in horror. Diana. Dad hissed. What? She already knows. Look at her face, she knows. Diana pointed an accusing finger at me. I needed that money for my apartment. My business is failing and you two won't help me anymore. I put my fork down and glared at her. So you stole from me? We didn't. Mom interrupted in a softer voice. We just faced reality. Diana needed a place to live and you're still in college. All paid for. That's what families do. Help each other out. Committing fraud? I asked incredulously. Selling something that belongs to me without my knowledge or consent and exchanging it for a fake? Don't be so dramatic, Dad said with a dismissive wave of his hand. It's just a painting, you wouldn't even have anywhere to put it. It was my inheritance, I said, my voice low and controlled despite the anger rising inside me, the only thing Grandpa wanted me to have. Well, what's done is done, Mom said firmly. These are family matters, Julia. Family helps family, don't be selfish. I got up from the table, my appetite gone. I want my painting back. That's enough. Mom stood up, her face flushed with anger. I think you need to leave this house and think about your behavior. Behavior? When you're ready to understand the value of family relationships, you can come back. Kick her out, Dad. Diana insisted. She's threatening us over a stupid painting. She doesn't deserve to be here. I looked at each of their faces, barely recognizing these people who were supposed to love me. Without another word, I went upstairs, packed my things, and left. I only turned off the voice recorder when I was safely outside, making sure I had captured every incriminating word. I checked into the hostel, my mind racing. What was I supposed to do now? My phone kept buzzing with calls and messages from my parents and Diana, but I ignored them all. Instead, I called the police and explained the situation. My inheritance had been stolen, replaced with a forgery, and used to buy an apartment for my sister. The police officer on the phone was friendly but cautious. This seems to be a civil matter, ma'am, but we'll look into it. Can you come to the station tomorrow morning? That night, I barely slept. By morning, my phone was flooded with increasingly angry messages from my family, accusing me of putting the police on them and calling me selfish. Around noon, I got a call from the police station asking me to come over. When I got there, my parents and Diana were already there, looking furious and scared. As soon as they saw me, they started talking over each other. She's lying. This is a family dispute. The painting was always meant to be shared. Enough, the detective in charge said firmly. Miss Peterson, your family claims you made this whole story up. They say you created the forgery and now you're trying to frame them. I felt a cold wave of disbelief wash over me. Of course they were going to turn this all against me. This is absurd, I said, pulling out my phone. I have proof. I played the recording of the dinner. Their voices were crystal clear as they admitted that they had sold my painting and replaced it with a forgery. The room fell silent as their confession was heard by the detective. Diana's face went white, Mom stared at the floor, and Dad couldn't seem to look at anyone. I also have all the documentation for the painting, I continued, pulling papers from my bag, including the certificate of authenticity and appraisal documents. I'm willing to have the painting at their house examined by experts to prove that it's a forgery. The detective nodded, making notes. That changes things. My parents and sister began to beg me not to press charges, but I stood my ground. I want to file a formal complaint, I told the detective, and I want my painting back. What followed was a blur of police reports, investigations, and legal proceedings. The police tracked down the buyer of my painting, a wealthy collector who thought he was buying a legitimate work. The painting was seized as evidence, and a team of art experts confirmed it was an original, worth $600,000. Meanwhile, Diana was forced to sell her apartment to pay the buyer. She cooperated with the investigation, admitting her part in the scheme and explaining how she managed to pull off the forgery. The court acknowledged her cooperation and the fact that she had paid back the money, so she was given a suspended sentence instead of going to prison. She was also ordered to pay me $10,000 in emotional damages, money she had to borrow from our parents, who had already spent most of their savings helping her with her business. Throughout the trial, my parents said they did it for the good of the family. They told everyone that I was betraying them by going to the police, that I had turned the cops on my own family because of a painting. They never acknowledged stealing from me. They lied to me, and they tried to deceive me when I confronted them. You're not our daughter anymore, my mother told me outside the courthouse after the last hearing. We don't want to see you again. It hurt, but less than I thought it would. The truth is, they never really saw me. When everything was settled, I got my painting back. It was even more beautiful than I remembered, and the eyes of the woman in the painting seemed to have a new wisdom now. I put it in a bank vault, safe until I could take care of it properly. That was 6 months ago. I'm in my last year of college now, still focused on finishing my degree and honoring Grandpa's trust in me. I haven't spoken to my parents or Diana since the trial. According to mutual acquaintances, after she lost her apartment, Diana had to move back in with our parents. They tell people dramatic stories about the ungrateful daughter who destroyed the family. After I graduate, I plan to find a good job and eventually a place of my own. When I do, I will hang Grandpa's painting in the most important place in my house, not because of its value, but because it represents the one person who always believed I deserved a fair chance. As for my family, I don't know if we will ever reconcile. Some wounds are too deep to heal quickly. But I know I did the right thing by standing up for myself. Families should support each other, yes, but not by sacrificing one member for the other, not by stealing, lying, or manipulating. Maybe one day they will understand that. Until then, I will keep moving forward, building my own life and my own future, with or without them. The painting is kept in the safe. The eyes of the woman in it seem to say to me, serves me right.